Hey, good Wednesday evening, everybody, and welcome back to another Facebook Live show here on COSA TV. It is wonderful to have you with us tonight. Really looking forward to tonight's lineup, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But some more good news, I think, for horse people across the province of Ontario today. Just another update in terms of the allocated purse funding that has been made available. Just a notice going out today to update horse people that the checks for the final month or final week of racing in March, they have already been issued and mailed for the month of April. Those checks are being processed currently. And just wanting to notify horse people as well that you won't have to reapply for the month of May. The same information used to process the payments in April will be used. So that'll be certainly an easier process for horse people, and great to see that those funds are moving quickly. And again, we want to thank Ontario Racing, of course, COSA, Standardbred Canada for keeping the industry up to date on all of those developments. Wonderful news, and starting to hear some better news in terms of COVID-19 and the number of cases here specifically in Ontario. It seems that the numbers are heading in the right direction and starting to get some positive indications both in Ontario and other jurisdictions that business might start to resume in some way, shape, or form. And hopefully that's going to include horse racing, and some signs that that might be the case, at least in some jurisdictions, and hopefully in the very near term here as well. Want to remind you as well, another interesting promotion that's set to go this year. COSA teaming up with Trot Magazine for the 2020 Fantasy Stable. Visit Standardbred Canada's website. You can submit your stable absolutely free to play along. And some wonderful prizes, including a grand prize of a night in that beautiful VIP suite at Mohawk Park for a group of 25, and the total value of that package close to $4,000. Wonderful, wonderful prize. Check out the Standardbred Canada website for more information and to fill out your fantasy stable and play along this year. Before we get started tonight, we have a poll question that we're going to be asking you off the top. Have your say with us tonight as well. We've got three of the largest commercial breeders, of course, in North America on the show tonight. So that is the theme of tonight's poll question. And it surrounds yearlings when trying to pick out that perfect yearling. What is the most important trait or most important consideration to you? Is it pedigree, conformation, overall athleticism, or something else? We'd love to hear from you. Leave your answers for us in the comments section, and we will check the results a little bit later tonight. We have some trivia questions that we're going to pass along throughout the show as well. And you can also play along and have your say in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have any questions for tonight's guests, please leave those with us as well. So at this time, we'd like to welcome in our three guests joining us this evening. They're all very busy people, so we certainly appreciate them taking the time to join us. As the right now three most successful commercial breeding operations in North America in terms of winnings at the time when racing was ceased all over North America. Hanover Shoe Farms, Dr. Bridget Jablonski joining us from there, Pat Woods from Winback of Ontario, and Ann Stratman from just up the road here in Lucan, Ontario from Sealster Farms. Guys, pleasure to have you all with us tonight. Hope you're doing well.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
And maybe we'll start with you, Bridget, in terms of Pennsylvania and the mood there. I mean, it's like every other jurisdiction in the fact that racing has ceased, but for you guys, I'm sure your day-to-day operations haven't changed a whole lot to this point.
No, the foals are still coming, the mares are still getting bred. So as far as farm life goes, it's a pretty normal breeding season. We've had to change certain things as far as semen pickup and how we get semen to the farm, but it's pretty much business as usual at the farm right now.
Well, Hanover, I mean, it's long been said, and it's true. It is the greatest name or the most recognizable name in the sport of harness racing. We'll bring up a photo here off the top, and maybe just tell us about the name. You know, the town that you're in is obviously you know, the namesake of the farm, but I mean, you guys must take tremendous pride in the brand that you've been able to develop over decades at Hanover.
Sure. So the farm was basically got rolling in 1926. So we're coming up on 100 years, and it's a brand. I think the Hanover name is very recognizable, not only in our business, but in the town. So we're in South Central Pennsylvania, and we're kind of a tourist attraction. So people that visit that region visit the farm, and before the virus hit, you know, we welcome visitors, and we were actually a stop on the tours in South Central Pennsylvania in our county. So, you know, I'm very proud to be associated with Hanover. It was my first job out of vet school. It's the only job I've had. It's the only business I've worked for. And yes, I'm proud, and I think the Hanover name just, you know, is associated with greatness, and I'm proud of that.
And you could say the same thing certainly for Sealster Farms, you know, the pride of the Canadian breeding industry for sure, and been around a long time as well. And Stratman, we're going to bring up a photo from your operation, and this is really what it's all about, isn't it? And, you said you thought maybe had a new arrival just before you came on air, but it was a false alarm.
Oh no, it was full being born, and I just caught my sister and my niece running out to the barn and helping out my cousin Tina in the barn. So yeah, everything turned out okay. And no, they're born at all hours, mostly in the evening and at night, but another arrival at Sealster Farms this evening.
Fantastic. And truly a family operation. I believe you're now the third generation, correct? Running the farm, and started in back around 1950.
That's right. Started with my grandfather and my father, two uncles, and my aunt. And now my son and my cousin were third generation. It's a love affair that started with us since we were tall enough to look in the stalls.
Absolutely, that's one. Pat, little different scenario for you. You've worked at various different breeding farms over the course of your career, but recently moving to the management position at Winback of Ontario. And really unique, your farm, isn't it, in the fact that you're one of the few now that has large operations in many different jurisdictions around North America.
Yes, you know, we have our main farm down in Maryland, which is very big, and most of our stock is there. But we also have a breeding station in Delaware. We have a farm in New York, and then we have the farm up here in Ontario. So we're spread out, but the operation, you know, runs as one unit.
And Joe and Joanne Thompson, of course, the proprietors of Winback Farm, and we're going to bring up some footage of the operation now, and a look at what was formerly the Great Armstrong Brothers Farm. Has much changed, or does it kind of still look a little bit like the old Armstrong Brothers?
No, it's very much the same here. Everything's kind of laid out the same way. We have about half of the space that Armbro did, but that works well enough for what we here. The biggest operation is the stallions up here. We keep about 35 mares, and we have a few outside mares as well. But our main focus of our largest group of mares is down at the Maryland farm. So we're constantly shipping semen down there from Ontario for breeding purposes.
And that footage, I believe, was from an open house you had not too long ago, and looked like you had a great turnout for that. So I know that's something you all do. Bridget, you talked about it. You like to welcome visitors and show them what you do. Not able to do that now, but other than that, has your day-to-day operation changed much or been impacted much with the COVID-19 situation?
So we've changed a little bit how people can come to the farm to pick up semen and pick up mares or drop mares off. Previously, when we were bringing semen in from other stallions, particularly Ontario, we would fly it. We're not comfortable having our employees go to the airport, so we're utilizing FedEx solely this year, and that's been a little bit of a change in mare management. And we've had to make some changes with our employees. So we have almost 80 employees. Our population hovers around the 900 mark, 900 horses. So we're very dependent on our employees. So we had to put into place a lot of protocols to keep them healthy and to ensure that they could come to work. So we extended the amount of sick days they could get. We pay co-pays if they need to go to the doctor, if they're not feeling well, to make sure they go to the doctor. And also we pay people if they're off, if they don't have childcare, so that they can continue to work for us when childcare resumes. So it's basically trying to continue, because breeding season, it's not optional. The mares are going to foal, they have to be bred back, and we're just trying to get it done as safely as possible and keep everybody safe and healthy with as little disruption as possible.
And Pat, I assume it's a similar situation for you. You were telling me earlier today, in terms of what you have to do day to day, as Bridget said, the work must continue. Any additional protocols in place for staff specifically to try and, make the environment as safe as you can for them?
We try to do everything we can. We try to provide them with any, safety measures they need, request. We try to enforce and ask them to make sure you're not going out, not going in public. If anything happens in your household, make sure you let us know. We've had a couple of people that have isolated just to make sure they didn't bring anything to the farm to risk, the health of the other workers, because it's critical that we have enough staff to look after these horses day to day. I mean, these mares won't wait and we have the clients when they're calling in for semen orders and to get them what they need to continue their farms breeding and foaling and everything else. So we've just, try to keep our staff very safe.
And I remember the first time going to Hanover, being in awe, of course, and a beautiful farm. But what also struck me is it's a real working farm as well. And Anne, it struck me, I remember visiting Sealster for the first time and thinking it kind of felt like maybe a smaller version of Hanover. The color scheme of the barns, I think, is similar. The property, kind of laid out a certain way. Is that a fair assessment, or do you see that way at all?
That's a true compliment. So I thank you. Sealster is absolutely a working farm, and we're not fancy, but one thing my sister Karen always says, it doesn't cost anything to be clean. So it is absolutely pristine when she is sweeping and keeping things clean, sweeping all of the paved area. But that's absolutely true. We're a working farm as well. And it's a pleasure to be thought of as the mini Hanover Shoe Farms.
Thank you, Anne.
Again, our special guest tonight, Bridget Jablonski from Hanover Shoe Farms, Pat Woods of Winback of Ontario, and Anne Stratman of Sealster Farms. We're going to get to our first trivia question now, and want to remind you to please leave any questions or comments for us, and we'll try and get to some of those throughout the show. So we're just going to try and have a little fun tonight with our trivia. The first one, regarding Hanover Shoe Farms derives its name from the Hanover Shoe Company, which sold shoes across the U.S. in the early 1900s for $2.50 a pair. Is that true or false? True or false? And again, leave your answers for us in the comment section. And we'll recap all the trivia questions and give you the answers to those later. Don't forget, we've got a poll question tonight as well that you can play along with, and be interested to get your feedback on that. Here's the question again that we're asking people tonight. When looking for a yearling, what's the most important consideration? Is it pedigree, conformation, athleticism, or something other than that? Well, certainly one half of the equation when trying to produce a great yearling is a great broodmare. And one of the greatest of all times stood at Hanover. Her name was Rich and Elegant. Bridget, to maybe just talk about the impact that great mare had in your operation.
She was a great mare that came from humble beginnings. I believe at one time she was a 12 claimer. She just, she had brothers that were champions, and she had sons that were great sires. And she was a very classy mare. And interestingly, she was a very docile, mellow mare. She took great care of her foals. Towards the end of her life, interesting story about her, she never, to my recollection, she never had a foal get sick or hurt. She was a great mother, and her yearlings all got to the sales like in great shape. She raised them well. Towards the end of her life, we needed to do a embryo transfer on her. And she had difficulty carrying a foal, and we decided to do embryo transfer. So we transferred an embryo to a thoroughbred mare. And that foal got kicked in the hock and couldn't get sold. And that was the first foal of hers that ever got hurt because she didn't raise it. She was just very smart. Like when the herd would come in, she'd always be waiting at the back with her foal. She wouldn't get involved in any of the fighting or arguing who was going to come in first. She would just hang out in the back with her foal. She was a great mother. And I think she taught them a lot of class. And, Rock and Roll Hanover, he was one of the classiest, nicest yearlings we've ever raised. So it was a very, very sad day at the farm. I'm sure Pat and Ann can tell you when these mares that you've had for so many years and that have been such big contributors to your farm, and they're like part of your family. And it was just a very, very sad day when she colicked. She was in declining health, and she colicked, and we decided to euthanize her. And it was just a very sad day. And we have 2 daughters of hers, but they haven't come close to replicating. None of her daughters have come close to replicating her feats as a broodmare. So I think she lives on in her sons. And it's a shame that Rock and Roll Hanover had such an early death, because I think he would have been a force in the stallion ranks, and he really would have had a bigger impact on the sport than he did as a sire.
Yeah, I think I agree totally with that sentiment. And we had a look at a tribute video to her when she was inducted into the Horse Racing Hall of Fame. We saw some of her great performers. You mentioned Rock and Roll, her richest performers. She had Royal Flush Hanover, Red River Hanover, also millionaires. And Rustler Hanover was just dollars away from millionaire status as well. So very nearly sired quartet. And I'm sure you've had, those great brood mares that have really impacted your operation. Is there one in particular that really holds a special spot for you?
I'm not sure if she's the most impactful mare, but one that we raised who suffered a broken patella when she was a weanling. And we were advised that she would never be a racehorse, and advised by the surgeons that we should euthanize her. She was the sweetest thing, and we rehabilitated her instead. And her name is Atlantic Sealster, a descendant of one of Dr. J's mares. And she has, even though unraced, she's sound now and has produced some nice some offspring. She was one horse that I always took to the all equine show at the Western Fair District. She was had such a good nature to her that with a foal at her side, she would let anyone come up to her and pet her foals. And she at the Western Fair District with the stall height, there was a gentleman and his caregiver. He had a movement disorder and was in a wheelchair, and his attendant wanted for him to see the mare and her foal. So I beckoned him closer, opened the door, and he put his wheelchair in the door of the stall, and she was such a sweet, kind mare. She went and put her head right in his lap so that he could touch her and pet her head. And she's got a soft spot in everyone's heart here at the farm. Atlantic Sealster is her name.
And Pat, I'm sure that's something you guys face too. I'm sure you get attached to certain horses. When it comes to brood mares, though, what are you trying to identify in a filly or a mare that you think will give her potential to join your group?
Like we always try to find mares that are conformed very well. We like them to be athletic, and we're hoping that when we cross them, those genetics will pass on to the foals. Pedigree goes a long way, but conformation is very key with passing on these traits to the foals. So we try to find good mares that raced well and are conformed very well.
And a mare that probably fits the bill in all of those aspects, and talk about a world champion on the racetrack, was Hannelore Hanover. Bridget, coming full circle, you welcome her back to Hanover now as a brood mare. Take us back to her early days. What do you recall about her as a youngster?
She was a very good looking filly, very typical swan frall, dark, long-legged. She was nice. Her mother hadn't gotten off to a very good start as a broodmare, and it's well known that before Hannelore became Hannelore, we actually culled the mare, and we were fortunate enough to get her back. And we have her back now. She has a Walner yearling to sell this year, and she just foaled a full sister to Hannelore that looks just like Hannelore. It's like a little mini Hannelore. She was not. I can't lie and say when I was looking at her as a yearling, I thought that she would make $3 million and be horse of the year in 49. But she was a nice yearling. But she's a very, very special mare, and we were trying to get her back, and they wanted to keep racing her one more year. And there were a lot of people interested in her. We're fortunate. We have a very good relationship with the Burkes, and I think they wanted her to come home. And we were able to strike a deal that was satisfactory for both parties. And, she's home now, being bred to Green Shoe. And I think I will be more excited for that Green Shoe foal out of her than any foal ever born of the thousands and thousands of foals that I've ever seen. I can't wait to see that one. That is going to be a truly special foal.
Yeah, a lot of people will be looking forward to that. Here's a look at Hanover, one of her greatest moments back at the Red Mile in Lexington.
Homicide Hunter into second. Hannelore Hanover has rebounded here. It's all Hannelore Hanover in 1:49.2. World record for Hannelore Hanover.
So there it was, her world record performance. And as you said, a winner of more than $3 million, $3.3 million to be exact, and mated with Green Shoe. And that's going to be fun to watch. And we can't wait for that. We've got some questions now that we're going to pass along to our three guests. Again, we really thank them for joining us tonight. First question. We'll get to that from Blake McIntosh. Blake McIntosh, one of our biggest fans of the show. I know Dr. J named Perfect Boy Hanover after me, but how do you guys come up with all the names? That's a good question. We'll let Bridget maybe take that. That's a big job for somebody to name all those horses every year.
Well, first I'm going to correct Blake for the 5th time. Perfect Boy was not named after him. But if he wants to think so, that's okay. And I hear he's training very well, and I wish Blake the best of luck with him. He was a very nice colt. So I've taken over the main responsibility of naming them. I named the foals that are yearlings now, and this crop I'm naming, and it is hard because we have parameters. All of our foals are named with the first letter of their dam's name, and Hanover takes up 8 spaces, so we can only use 11 in the first name. So it's hard. So what I do is I will look up what the mare's name means or the stallion's name, and I try to name the foal that has something to do with either the mare's name or the stallion's name. If all else fails, I just look up babies' names and I try to name them a good name. But I do put some effort into it. I think, like you said before, the Hanover brand, I think it really helps us when a horse keeps its Hanover name, because then people don't have to look up the breeder. They know the breeder when they hear Hanover. So I think if you give it a good name that people want to keep, like Blake's not going to change Perfect Boy Hanover's name. If he had a name he didn't like, he might change it. So I think by giving them a catchy name, a name people like, they're more inclined to keep it. So I try my hardest, but you always get people that are going to change names, but it's hard.
Sure.
And I welcome any ideas. If all of our foals are listed on our website, if anyone sees a foal that they would like to suggest a name for, just let us know and we'll try to use it.
And Pat, do you guys have a process for naming your foals?
Yeah, we're very lucky. Liz Cheeseman, who runs our PR and communications, puts all of our foals on Facebook and Twitter, and they'll ask for name suggestions, and people will send them in. We'll take a list of them, and then usually Joanne Thompson or the girls will look through them and pick the ones they like, and that's how they'll name most of our foals.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful to get the public engaged in the process as much as you can. That's fantastic. And I want to ask you about Sealster, the Sealster moniker. The background on that. Do you know what the backstory is on that particular name?
I do. It was started by my great-great-grandfather back in the Netherlands. He was a horse dealer. He raised Clydesdales. And when my grandfather immigrated to Canada back in the 1950s with 12 children, Sealster started as a hobby that got out of hand. 12 children wanted a horse to ride. So my grandfather was a smart man, and he wanted to get a horse with papers. So it, by chance, was a standardbred mare that he got named Luella Brogue. And once they had a mare, he thought if she had papers, they would be able to sell her after the kids got tired of riding her. And they did get tired of riding her, but instead of selling her, they bred her. And that very first foal named Sharon Song after my youngest aunt. And they fell in love with her as well, raced her at the local Western Fair back in the 1960s, and decided to name their farm not after the Van Bussel name, which was our family name, but after Sealster, which was my great-great-grandfather's name in the Netherlands.
And I think as a longtime fan, it's another one of those names that's just instantly recognizable, and you hear that name all over North America, and probably really does a lot for the brand, as Bridget said, as it does with Hanover. I think we have another question. Curtis, is that correct? Curtis McDonald, our ace producer behind the scenes, getting it loaded up for us. This one coming from Elizabeth. How did Dr. J, know now 3-year-old Yankee cruiser Elver Hanover was going to be special enough for her to personally retain a piece the undefeated colt, Elver Hanover, we should say.
Well, so I didn't actually retain a piece. So he got sold and then I bought 10% of him.
Okay.
Just, it's a little different. But it's well documented that I loved Elver as a yearling. He, you know, and I know that Pat and Ann, this happens to them too. They start off as foals and you like them. You like some of them better than others. And then as they progress, you know, the cream kind of rises to the top. And that last 8 weeks in the fairgrounds, you really get to know them. And by the time he got to the fairgrounds and we were prepping him for the sale, like every day that he was in there, I thought he was more and more special. And he's a gorgeous horse. He looks a lot like Yankee Cruiser, perfect conformation. And I just, he's smart and he was easygoing, yet he had a willing attitude. Like, I don't know, he just felt special to me. And so we sold him at the Ohio sale, and he went for a lot of money, $50,000. You know, for a Yankee Cruiser colt out there is a lot of money. But I thought that he was so willing, and so I don't think we've ever had a yearling, or I've ever had raised a yearling that I felt was so in tune with people, and that were like, he was like always trying to do what you wanted him to do. I could sense that he was like on your team and he was working with you. And, you know, there was other yearlings of that year that I loved. Poppy, Rob Hanover, the colts that are now Captain Midnight, Captain Nemo. They went for a lot more money. This was a colt that I could buy part of and afford it. So, you know, I asked to get in on him, and, you know, he's a good colt, and he displays a lot of the attributes that I saw when we were prepping him. He is very relaxed, takes care of himself. You know, you can do anything with him in a race. He's sleeping right after the race, but when the wings of that gate drop, he's business. So I'm fortunate. He's probably the first good horse I've had, so I'm really happy.
And good might be an understatement. 9 for 9 last year, co-fastest 2-year-old of all time with his 48-3 record, 360,000 I think earned. So very nice colt indeed. What are the reports on him coming into this year?
He trained back great. He was ready to go. His first race was April 11th, the Scarlet and Gray in Ohio. He got shut down early. He was shut down right after Lexington. He wasn't eligible to the Breeders' Crown, so Ronnie was planning on starting him early. So he's just in a holding pattern. When we find out racing can resume, like he's ready to go. He grew a lot. Ronnie says that he was kind of a slight, I don't want to say slight, but an average size, not big, robust colt, you know, not a Poppy Rob looking colt last year. Ronnie's really happy with the weight and muscle he's put on. He says he's really much stronger looking. I haven't been able to go see him with all of this that's been going on, so I haven't seen him, but I hear that he's gained a lot of weight and muscle. So he's doing well, and he's going to get a crack at the top colts this year. He's eligible to the North American Cup, the Adios, and the Breeders' Crown. So we'll see. I'm excited.
Well, can't wait to see him back and all of the great stakes performers from this past year when we're able to. Pat, I want to ask you about yearlings. We heard Bridget talk about the fact that this guy started to really make an impact as a yearling. She could sense something special. Do you notice that in your yearling crops, that even at that stage you can start to see colts or fillies that have maybe a little something about them?
Yeah, somewhat. It's a little different for me up here in Ontario because in usually the first week of December, I'll ship all my weanlings down to the Maryland farm, and we'll raise all the yearlings at the Maryland farm where they can sort them out on which sale they're going to go in, assess, you know, which ones they want to put where. So some of my weanlings I won't see until they come back up here to be prepped for the London sale. And then some of the other ones I won't see till I go to Lexington or go to Harrisburg. I haven't seen them in a few months. But it's nice when, you know, we let them go in December as a weanling, and we think, you know, they're pretty nice, but, you know, they're getting their winter coats, and then actually when you see them come back and, you know, they're looking sharp and bigger and, you know, turned into a nice horse, it's a really nice surprise for you, especially the ones that you thought were special, and they come back and then you're like, oh yeah, he is special or she is special. It really is nice. And then when you see those go on to great performers, it gives you a really warm feeling that, you know, that you were a part of it. And maybe, you know, it makes me think that, you know, my eye's not too bad when I see a decent horse here and there.
That's an interesting process. So these youngsters are already, you know, well traveled by the time they get back to you. What's the process like from there when you get them back in your care, getting them ready and prepped for the upcoming sale?
Well, our yearly manager, Jim, will put the first 2 weeks down in Maryland, get their video and us. So most of their manners too bad. We just keep them fit, you know, get them polished and you know, performing well, standing right, and keep manners, just so that when they train them, they can go on with them right away, and they don't really have to teach them anything. You know, it just takes them a little bit of time. But it's a hard process to get them looking good for a sale. People think understand hard work, and this goes into these to make them look sharp for this ring. It's a real process, and it's really hands-on. Like, we're watching them all the time for weight. You know, we don't want them too big. You don't want them too, you want them just right. So it's a lot of work, but rewards there when you see people happy with their purchases and happy, you know, when they take that horse home. It's a good feeling.
Yeah. And what's it like around your place as you start to ramp up toward, especially the London sale? You're such an integral part of that, and usually always have a large consignment. Had the sales topper last year, a record, in fact, a Canadian record. How's the atmosphere around your place as you ramp up toward that?
It is a breeder's biggest payday, so of course it's on our mind all year long. It's something that we begin with conception, with good nutrition and conception, then good pro they grow up. It's something that is always on our mind, even though London sale is still quite a few months away. We're already planning. We're already thinking about how is that going to be this year with COVID-19, and will there be enough relief in the restrictions to be able to hold the sale as we hope in October. So it's hard to know and to feel secure in not knowing exactly how the fall is going to be.
On that note, do you think about plan Bs or other options? For example, some sort of virtual or online sale or some component of that?
Of course, that has been a consideration. Of course, our hope is that we can go ahead with the auction as we always have, but we're already looking into what could be Plan B, what could be a virtual auction, and I wish that my crystal ball didn't look so much like a snow globe at this time of year. And I hope that in the months coming, once racing is back, we'll know how the season will unfold, and what will be the best for the London sale. It's difficult to know right now.
I'll ask you two as well, you know, sort of the similar question. Maybe it may be difficult to predict at this point in time, but the impact you think COVID-19 will have on the sales this fall. Bridget, we'll start with you.
Well, I think we're very much in the same boat. I'm hoping that we can have a sale at Harrisburg, but there's some factors that will be out of our control. The building is a state-owned building to begin with, so we have to worry about, being able to use it. And if there's still social distancing, which seems likely, we'll have to be able to figure out how we're going to be able to do that. And we've thought of Plan B and Plan C. Depending on the restrictions on gatherings, we could have a sale at the farm. We've thought. We have 238 yearlings slated for Harrisburg, and if we couldn't, if the Harrisburg sale, God forbid, did not take place, I think we have enough yearlings that people would come to the farm if we could hold it at the farm. And Plan C would be, of course, to sell them online. Another concern is with the racing season so compacted, there's going to be, people are going to make less money, and people are in a hole right now. They've been paying training bills and they haven't been generating any revenue. And I think that the top tier yearlings will be fine. But I think that the middle range and the lower range yearlings, it's going to be a bit of a tough year to sell them this year. But, the breeding business is a long range business. So there's just some years you just have to batten down the hatches and just take your lumps and bruises, sell them as best you can, hope that they go on to be good and make their mother more valuable and her offspring more valuable down the road, and hope for a better year next year. So I think there's just so many variables right now that we just have to wait and see what's going to happen, and just, prep these yearlings the same, promote them the same, market them the same, and just do the best we can with them.
And Pat, you mentioned the fact that you have horses that are transported back and forth across the border. Is that going to be an impact for your operation?
It definitely could be. We're definitely, nervous about the uncertainty of everything right now. We have had, talks internally about what our options could be, like Hanover, like Winback is big enough down in Maryland that, they could host a sale if we had to, if that's an option. Normally we sell in 5 different sales, so it's hard to know each year is going to have restrictions they'll be held by. So right now we're up in the air. We have had talks about it. We have, a Plan B in place if things, don't sort themselves out. I know Joe said that he doesn't want to have to race 300 yearlings this year. So, I mean, we're just kind of waiting to see what happens. And when we get back to racing, then we'll be able to make some better decisions on how things will play out. And I think everyone's doing their best in keeping their minds open to, this year may be a little different than other years, and, we may have to change things. So it's good that the industry is open to things like that.
That's a good point. The entire industry has a way of coming together when times are tough, and I think this is another example of how we're going to do that. And some creativity along the way is going to help as well. The 3 farms you guys are involved with all stand some of the most high-profile stallions of the sport, and we're going to turn our attention a little bit to that now. And we'll begin with you, and of course the big guy, Cam Luck. Just a thought, he's not with us anymore, but the impact he had on your operation. He came to your farm in 1993, and he has been, without question, the greatest pacing stallion in Canadian history.
Absolutely. Love seeing that picture of him. I still believe he holds the all-time record for progeny earnings. And he was certainly the most intelligent horse we've ever had. and was able to pass that along to his foals. And as Dr. J said, it's nice to be able to see how quickly they can learn. And it's something that isn't as easy to teach, but I believe that it's inbred right into the horse. So Kamluk was not only a great sire, but a great broodmare sire now. And it's nice to see the likeness of him still coming out in the mares that are by Kamluk. So he's still with us. And he'll be a part of pedigrees for a long, long time.
When he left the racetrack, he banged heads with one of the best crops ever at the time. He earned his share. He made $1 million, won some of the biggest races in the sport. But when he came to your farm, I mean, what did you think you were getting in Kamluk? I mean, you couldn't have foreseen what he eventually went on to do. But what kind of excitement was there around the farm when he came?
Well, I have to say that was my dad with Bob McIntosh, and they had planned it once he hit the $1 million mark. They were excited to get him home and believed that he had all the potential in the world. I remember Bob McIntosh saying he was either going to look like an idiot or a genius by breeding his broodmare band to Kamluk. And he ended up looking like a genius. And there were so many top horses came from Kamluk. And it did a world of good for Sealster as well. We were happy to support him, and he actually put us on the map, I think.
Absolutely. So here he is back from his days on the racetrack back in 1991, I believe, winning the Breeders' Crown. Here's the call.
Snoop says 6, racing 7th, odds against base, fella trails past the half, 54-3, second quarter in 27-1, the fastest half mile ever in the Breeders' Crown, horse and gelding pace. Down the backside they go. Here comes Kamluk to grab the lead on the outside. Do Run Bluegrass gives way second. Ross County on the outside third. Jake and Elwood locked in at the rail. Ultra Jet on the outside. 3/4, 1:22-4, 28-1. Backside, fastest 3/4 ever as they race around the final turn. It's Kamluk the leader on the outside. Cross County and Ultra Jet. Down the stretch they come. Kamluk at the rail, closing on the outside with a rush. Ross County coming for the wire. Ultra Jet third. Kamluk, Cross County on the outside. Kamluk at the rail. 1:52-1, defeating Cross County and Ultra Jet.
52-1. Kamluk, one of the biggest wins of his career, his $1 million career, but really in the stallion shed where he separated himself from many of the others. You mentioned it, and he held the record. I believe it's been surpassed recently, but according to my statistics, $245 million in combined earnings, 662 $100,000 winners, and 30 millionaires sired by the great Kamluk. Incredible. We have another question to pass along next. And this one coming to us from, I can't read that. We're going to have to get Curtis to adjust the settings. Moira Fanning. What stallion was a particular challenge to you? That's a good one. We'll maybe ask all three of you that. Start with Bridget. Was there a particular stallion that was really more challenging than others?
In terms of breeding, I assume she means.
I assume.
So Some Beach Somewhere was a little bit of a challenge. He did not take to the Phantom, the mare, very well. He spent his first year being collected on a live mare. He was a very smart horse, and I think he knew what we wanted him to do, but he was smart enough to know the difference. So for his entire first breeding season, he was collected on a live mare. So the second year, I said, you know what, we're going to train him to the Phantom. It's just not safe. He's too valuable. He needs to learn this. So, one method that you can use is to put when they're ready to mount, you put the AV on them and you bring them over to the Phantom and you try to get them to mount. And if I could have taped this and sent this to Funniest Home Videos, I would probably have won the $100,000, because he just, instead of mounting, he just laid down really gently. Like, he didn't throw himself down. He laid down really gently and went lateral and just laid there and looked at me like, I'm not doing this, lady. But he got up, we did it again. He mounted the Phantom and he got trained to it. But he was smart, and he was challenging. Like, he was, and he stayed that way. Like, if you had a mare he liked, he could be in and out of the breeding shed quickly. If you did not present him with a mare he liked, you were in it for the long haul. Like, you just take your day, anything you had to do, any appointments you had, just cancel them, because you were going to spend the day with him until you found him a mare that was worthy of him. So he was challenging, but he was every bit worth it. So yeah, he was challenging in a good way.
Patience is a virtue, and certainly in that case. Pat, same question to you. Any that you remember in particular?
One I worked with at Terra Hills, stallion called Here Comes Herbie, and he was the nicest horse to be around. He was a perfect gentleman, everything right, except just at that moment, he just would not go. And we struggled with it and struggled with it. And he had foals on the ground at the time that were beautiful looking. And we just couldn't get him, to finally do his business. We tried him on a mare, we tried him, and he did everything perfect right up to that point. And then he would just stop. And I remember the days when Dave Heffering was pulling his hair out, worried about having to get the shipments out and having to make, flights and FedEx and everything else, and, trying to get this horse collected in time. And it was a struggle all the time. And you didn't know from day to day what was going to be his mood in the breeding shed when he finally had to do his job.
And Anne, we'll put the same question to you.
We have such a great group of stallions right now, all very intelligent, very respectful, and they've been a great group. But looking back in the past, I remember a trotting horse called Federal Flex, and very kind-hearted, sweet horse, but his libido was a little low. And he decided that he'd like to have two mares in the shed, a menage a trois, so to speak. And we indulged him in order to move things along, and that's how we got along with him. Great horse, but just needed a little extra encouragement.
All right, let's try and keep it clean for the rest of the show, okay? Let's move on. We've got another trivia question to pass along to you. And this one is regarding the great Cam Luck. As mentioned, he has sired 30 $1 million winners. And that may be the most that I've been able to see. And if there is another out there that has sired more $1 million winners, leave us a comment and just to verify that. Can you name Cam Luck's richest performer, though? Of the $30 million winners, which one was his richest performer? Leave us your answer in the comment section. We'll be drawing one name at random at the end of the show for a $25 COSA gift card, and we'll recap all of the questions and answers at the end of the show as well. Well, we turn our attention to the big gun at Winback Farms, and in looking at the stats earlier today, it appears that he has surpassed Cam Luck in overall progeny earnings, according to Standardbred Canada. So again, I'm using that as my source, but $252 million, and still going strong, it appears, Pat. How's the old guy doing?
He's a bit of a freak in nature. Like, the horse should be slowing down, and he just isn't. He's just, I don't know if it's because he's grumpy all the time that, he's one of those grumpy old men that just keep on going. I'm not really sure. He just does it all the time. Whenever the breeding shed, whatever his numbers he has to cover, he just does it. And his semen quality is still as outstanding as it's ever been. We like having him around. He and I he's 22.
22.
So we have a lot of pride in him because he is a win-back bred horse. It's pretty important for us having him here that, we're proud of him and we're proud of his accomplishments. Surprisingly, he's not a very big horse, but he really passes on his strong gait, his willingness, and it seems to be passed on in those foals he has, because we get a lot of reports that the Bettor's Delights are usually a handful as yearlings. And, we're really proud of his accomplishments here.
Yeah. And nice to see Scott McEnany with him there, the man who conditioned him on the racetrack. And again, this is recent footage. This is from your open house just a few months ago. And he looks fantastic for 22 years old. Just incredible. What's he like around the barn?
He's grumpy, miserable. He's set in his ways. He gets what he wants. When he goes out to the paddock, we'll take him out to the paddock, and he always tries to get that last nip in before he runs away, and just smirk on his face, the whole time. He knows exactly what he's doing. And, he'll knock at the door when he decides it's time for him to go outside. But, he has, and he gets away with a lot more than the other ones do because of it.
Sure. I think Cam Luck, if I remember, had the same royal treatment at Sealster Farms as well. But Bettor's Delight, and still very much in demand. It's incredible, and you really appreciate these great stallions. You're hoping, though, you've got a new kid on the block, maybe a couple, Pat, but we'll start with Jimmy Freight. Your assessment of this guy. He's fresh off the racetrack, and how's he been fitting into his new home?
He's been doing good. He likes it. It took him a little transition from the racing. He liked to do his work. So, being in a stall and not going out and jogging all the time was a bit of a change for him, but he's settled right in now, and he's happy, he's healthy, and doing his job.
And really kind of a neat promotion, something unique in the industry. His owner, Adriano Sorella, devised a stake race restricted to offspring of Jimmy Freight. Again, something very unique. It'll be new in 2023. What impact did this promotion have on how appealing he was to potential breeders?
It definitely helped. People, anytime they can have a chance to win more money is always a benefit. I know, like, being a son of sports writer, has always been well supported in Ontario. And with Jimmy being the fastest son, a lot of people decided to give him a chance because of that speed, and in the hopes, they get a horse in that $100,000 race.
Absolutely, and it certainly has drawn a lot of attention, and especially here in Ontario. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch that when we see the first edition of the Jimmy Freight Stakes. We have another trivia question to get to next, our last one of the night, and this one is surrounding Classic Wish, the dam of the great Bettor's Delight. She was another one of those home run brood mares. Her production record was incredible, and produced two other millionaires besides Bettor's Delight. Can you name them? And leave your answer for us again in the comment section, and we'll recap all of those trivia questions coming up a little bit later. Bridget, I'll maybe throw it over to you next. In terms of trying to land a big name horse, when there's a 3-year-old on the race that's a stakes chance, up in for your operation, does that assessment take? What process like to lure one of these top horses to your farm?
So, we're always watching and looking, and a lot depends on what our roster looks like at the current time, and, how strongly we'll go after a horse, where our strengths are and where we feel like, we need to add. Certainly, in the case of Green Shoe, I'll bring him up because, he's our most recent addition. We had our eye on him when he was a 2-year-old. To me, he's, one of the most talented, naturally gifted horses I've ever seen. So straight from his baby races, we thought that he might be the horse that we would want to get at the end of his 3-year-old season. So with him, it started during the summer. We started talking to the owner, and it was a long negotiation process, but eventually we were able to land the deal. But usually with horses like that, the high-profile horses, the top horses, you're starting to talk and negotiate and have your eye on them a little bit earlier than, some other horses were kind of at the end of the season when the dust has settled, and you might need a mid-range pacing stallion, and one's available. You make a deal that's good for both sides. But with a horse like him that doesn't come around very often, or a Captain Treacherous or a Some Beach Somewhere, you start it a little bit earlier, and try to, maybe at the beginning of their 3-year-old year, get your interest known to the owners and start the process.
Well, you mentioned Some Beach Somewhere, and no more attention in the last 20 years. I don't think from any horse, more so than he drew when he raced. Phenomenal 2-year-old. He was undefeated, and then at 3, rewrote the record books. So yeah, I'm sure you had your eye on him and did the work to land him. What was the reaction at the farm when you find out collectively that you've landed Some Beach Somewhere?
I mean, it's thrilling. It's exciting. Like, to me, I love the yearling part. I love prepping the yearlings, selling the yearlings. I love watching them race, but I also love the stallions because you truly can amass the greatest horses and have them like we have 2 stallion barns. So if you walk through them, you get the very best of the best given to you at the end of their racing careers, and you're so lucky. And it, when he walked off, when Brent walked him off the trailer that day, I had mixed emotions. I was so excited and I was like so in awe of him, but I'm also always a little bit nervous because when they hand you that shank or when they put them in that stall, like the responsibility now is yours. And this is a $12 million, $14 million horse for you to keep safe and for you to collect successfully and get mares in foal. And, so I always approach it with a little bit of, well, I worry about everything, but I always have a little bit of worry that things, they're going to acclimate okay and things are going to work out for them. But he was, he was a gift. He was, I think it's going to take even a couple more years for the sport to realize how much they lost when we lost him so young. He had so much more to give. And his legacy will live on in his sons and his mares. He's a terrific broodmare sire already, and he'll have sons that are great sires. But he was well on his way, I feel, to becoming the most dominant pacing sire ever. He was just so dominant. You would look at a stake race, and there would be 5 horses that he sired in the race, and he just was one of those rare freaks on the racetrack that could become a freak in the breeding shed. Like I don't think I've ever seen a horse that was just so you know, maybe Muscle Hill would be the other one, but just so dominant on the racetrack and parlay that into complete dominance in the breeding shed. And he stamped them. I mean, they all sounded like him. His yearlings were such early bloomers. Like, they look like 2-year-olds. When they were weanlings, they looked like yearlings. When they were yearlings, they looked like 2-year-olds. They were precocious, and I think that's really what helped him. And it was, you know, devastating for us to lose him, but we were so fortunate that Captain Treacherous helped to fill his shoes somewhat, that he came along, and he's doing a pretty good job of trying to take over where Daddy left off. So, you know, when you get a horse like him or Captain or Green Shoe, you just have to feel so lucky and so honored to be entrusted with them. That's how I felt. I felt lucky and honored to be entrusted with his care.
And there is a look at Captain Treacherous, him trying to carry on the legacy, and so far it looks like he is going to do that. But you're right, just a shame to lose Some Beach Somewhere so early, and you could see the dominance in just a limited number of crops from him. But Green Shoe is the one you look forward to now. He's the new kid in the barn, and certainly has raised the expectation level, I'm sure, for you guys on the trotting side. Let's give you a glimpse back to him on the racetrack, and you're hoping, obviously, he can pass along some of the talent here. This is a look at him as he was prepping for the Hambletonian. Didn't work out for him, but ultimately, Bridget, I think you'd agree. I don't think by not winning the Hambletonian, I don't think it diminishes from him whatsoever. And what's the response been like so far, people knowing that he's going to be standing there?
I know that this phrase has been thrown around quite a bit. This is the greatest book of mares the stallion has ever gotten. But I can truly say that he is breeding the greatest book of trotting mares ever assembled. Hannelore Hanover and her mother, Ariana G, All the Time, Mission Brief, Asiago, Cedar Dove. I could go on, the Ice Duchess. I could go on and on. They're all being bred to him this year. So I think the respect he had, and people know what he could have done, and the fact that he didn't win the Hambletonian and that he didn't, break the world record, which we thought he was capable of. It didn't diminish much from him. He has a lot of respect. I think anyone that hasn't seen the video of him in the Kentucky Futurity taking from the starting car should watch that, because when he pulls out of the hole and brushes the lead, I know I've never seen a horse accelerate like that with such precision. Like his gait was flawless. Like he never put a foot down in the wrong spot. I, for one, Greg, think like there are great trainers out there, and you could help horses in lots of ways. Like they can help with attitude, they could help with gait, they could help, various things, but you need to start with speed. And I think he's going to pass. He had such extreme speed, and there were times I would watch him race and I would have to look closely to see if he was pacing. That's how flawless and fast like he was going. And no, it didn't work out for him on Hambletonian Day, and he didn't get the weather in Lexington. But I think, he was one of the most gifted horses I've ever seen. And he's a real pleasure to have in the stallion barn. He's extremely smart. He's great libido. I think he's probably one of the most fertile trotting stallions we have now, breeding a book of 140. So he's really the whole package. And I'm really excited. I don't think I've ever been as excited for a stallion as him. I just think he's a special horse. To me, he's a very special horse.
And the list of you named is incredible, to say the least. So yeah, he's going to get every opportunity for sure. Pat, now on a little bit of a different note for Winback of Ontario, rather than getting a young stake star fresh off the racetrack, You ended up with a new recruit in your barn recently who is retiring at the age of 8, 9 now. The dominant free-for-all pacer the last couple of years in McWicked. Tell us the circumstances behind getting him at the barn.
Well, we were very excited to get McWicked. We've been trying for the last couple of years. There's been sometimes hemming and hawing about whether he'd race another year or whether he'd go to the breeding shed. We've always been interested in him, and we were extremely happy to land a horse like McWicked. So tough on the racetrack. He was great early on. There's not many horses like him. That he never really had a lot of easy races. He was always stalking. He was always coming first up, doing the hard part of the race. And just, when he'd look a horse in the eye, he would just say to himself, I'm going to beat you. And most horses he put away, and he won a lot of races and a lot of big races and big money. It's really, we're really happy to have him, and we're supporting him very heavily.
Well, let's take a look back to him on the racetrack. And one of his finest moments came at the Red Mile from 2018. We'll take a look at that, come back and talk more about him in a moment.
From the far outside, so a host of early speedsters here as they barrel into that opening turn. Western Fame on full tilt early here, looking about foot to Filibuster Hanover. McWicked is about 3 lengths behind that pair. Third as Heaven Rocks looks to dive in front of him. All bets off, coming away racing in fifth. Lazarus still floating wide in the early stages, sixth, with Rocket Rondo was inside a seventh. Split the houses on the outer tier in that 8th spot, and at the back, Dr. J. Hanover. The opening quarter here, 26-1. And they move up the backstretch. Heaven Rocks did not want a seat, and Heaven Rocks powers out at the top here for Dave Miller, and he takes over affairs from Western Fame. Filibuster Hanover is chasing this toward pace from third. McWicked still patient to the 4th spot. He is 6 lengths off the top. Lazarus has been out every step, and he's still right at the outside there for Jingra in that 5th spot, alongside All Bets Off. The half mile, 52-1. 26 seconds in that second quarter, and that is Heaven Rocks who takes the field onto the far turn with 3/8 to go. Filibuster Hanover, the fresh threat. He's up on the outside to apply pressure for Kakali. That is McWicked. Moves up in the flow. Second over for Sears. Western Fame begins to gap off. Lazarus is up a third over. He's just 3 lengths off the lead as they move past 3 quarters, 119-1, and they have a big shot at it, turning for home. That is a Filibuster Hanover who has taken over affairs. McWicked takes dead aim late down the center. Lazarus rolling up on the far outside into the final 1/8 of a mile. And here we go. McWicked is into the lead. Lazarus up at the outside. These two going to battle down to the finish. McWicked or Lazarus. It's McWicked and Brian Sears. McWicked close to home. McWicked 146-2. Lazarus was second. Filibuster Hanover third.
Hard not to get excited about the prospects for him, Pat. Any difference with an Ultron horse coming in as a younger, maybe 3-4-year-old, just fresh off the stakes trail? Just wondering if there's any difference at all between a horse coming in to start standing stud at age 8 or 9 versus, say, one that's fresh off its 3-year-old season.
And he's no problem for any of them to take out. He's totally well behaved all the time. So I think just manners wise, he's just a lot more, docile and professional.
I think a question a lot of people might be interested in, and I believe we've got one in this vein, is how you decide which mares to pair with which stallions and that process. So, Curtis, I think you've got a question that we'll get to. along those lines. This one from Bill Sarton. Who is involved in making the final decision on which sire to breed each mare to? Maybe Bridget, we'll start with you and tell us a little bit about that process.
It'd be done by committee until the management change at the farm. And now basically I go through and do it and give it to Russell Williams for his approval, and then it's pretty much done. So, basically I'll just consider, mares that have had foals where they've had their successes. I like to match mares up with stallions physically because we're a commercial breeder and look sell. So you really want to breed mares to stallions that will eliminate their flaws if you can, accentuate their positives. And, in a case like Green Shoe, where he was an expensive horse, and we did it with Captain Treacherous, you basically take, we have 36 breedings to him. You basically take your top 36 trotting mares that can be bred to him, and unless there's a reason not to, they just go to Green Shoe. We're in the business of making stallions, and that's how you make them. So for us right now, it's basically Russell and I that do it.
Okay. And Anne, I believe we've got a question from Mark Horner, or maybe I'll pose this one to you. Along the same lines, wondering if you use any tools to help you in figuring out your crosses and who to breed to.
Absolutely. We, of course, use Track It, but I also use Norman Hall's pedigree matching. And I think there's a lot of contribution from the maternal side, both of the sire and of the dam. And we like to match up sires with our broodmare band doing that. And a lot like Dr. J said, we use a committee for our pairings. And I'm more to use the analytical side using pedigree, and my sisters, Tina and Karen, they match them more using confirmation and what has worked in the past and what has not. And the combination of the three of us can usually make a fairly wise choice on which stallion for which mare. So, and we like to breed mainly Ontario, but we do have mares booked all over. So it's a group effort for sure.
For sure. And it's paid off, as mentioned this past year here in London. You had the record price for a yearling ever in Canada, $270,000, colt by the name of Marlborough Sealster. Pat, we'll put the same question to you, maybe both questions, if you can try and answer just sort of your routine and how you do things at your farm.
Yeah, everything's done by, we make additions, we talk about previous performers, what lines worked, what lines didn't work. And, we put them all together. Some of it comes down to that we have to breed so many to certain stallions, because we stand them in the different jurisdictions. And we try to change things up a little bit to add some new lines into the different jurisdictions as well. Jim Ladwick has a lot to do with it because he sees these yearlings, 300 yearlings, he picks out the flaws and deficiencies, and we try to correct those in the next generations the best we can. And, ultimately the final say comes down to Joe. It's a round table meeting, and we make our submissions and we sit down and start knocking them out. And then I guess some of the ones that we're not sure on, maybe they flip a coin. I'm not quite sure.
To pick up on that, though, again, because you have farms in different jurisdictions around North America, how do you decide which stallions stand in those on the particular farms?
We try to offer something of a change for people. We try to go stand horses in jurisdiction feel they can have the most success or have had good success in the past. I mean, one of those examples was Courtly Choice. standing in New York because he's an art major. An art major was a dominant force in the New York Sire Stakes program. We felt it was important that that line was kept in New York, and they had a lot of success from those art majors there, and we felt he'd be a good cross in with those mares in New York.
Bridget, I'm going to turn it back over to you next and talk about the state of racing currently in Pennsylvania. It's interesting how it goes. Ontario, one of the first jurisdictions, of course, to have gaming or added gaming for a number of years, and injected a lot of money into the purses, obviously. That was taken away back in 2013. Pennsylvania a little bit later to the game, but some threats potentially when it comes to government now trying to claw back some of that money there. Just maybe update us as best you can on the situation from Hanover's perspective and your thoughts on the industry there in Pennsylvania.
I haven't heard too many updates. I think we've, the COVID has kind of taken over everybody's thoughts now. It's been pretty quiet on that front. Prior to all this, what I was hearing is, of course, a governor's proposed budget often looks nothing like the actual budget. And there was strong sentiment that, the money is in a fund, it's in a trust fund, and it cannot be taken without legislation being passed. And there's optimism that will not be able to happen. So we have lobbyists, and Hanover, Jim Simpson, Russell Williams, Diamond Creek Farm, we all contribute to, it's not just, these things have a way of coming to a head and then everybody pays attention to it. But this threat of losing our money or losing some of our money, it's a year-round battle. And it kind of never lets up. There's this push and pull. So we actually, Jim Simpson, I will say, spends much of his time in Harrisburg protecting horse racing in Pennsylvania. But I'm optimistic that we will come out of that situation fairly okay, although I am not as privy to what's going on as perhaps Jim or Russell would be.
And Anne, from the Ontario perspective, and you can look at it with a few different lenses, obviously in your role at Sealster, but chair of Standardbred Canada, involved on the board as well at the Western Fair District. So you wear several different hats, but what happened in 2013 and a scary time for the industry, talking about uncertainty. Since then, we've been able to be, I guess, stabilized, it might be the right word. Just your thoughts as the largest commercial breeder at this point in the industry in Ontario, and what you see for the future beyond COVID-19, obviously.
I think there's more security for breeding in Ontario now with the long-term funding agreement right till 2038, which gives a bit of stability and certainly has helped us out during COVID-19 with the ability to access the funds that were earmarked for racing to help those trainers along now who are not able to earn purse money, but has been fairly divided up. And hopefully we'll be able to get back to racing in a time when we can reschedule stakes that have been missed and have to extend the season too much longer. But I think that the long-term funding in Ontario has created a lot of stability for people, giving us a lot of confidence to buy yearlings. Our Ontario Sire Stake program is one of the best in North America. And I think there's a lot to be hopeful for.
Yeah, it's a good point. The stakes program in Ontario remains certainly one of the most lucrative. Pennsylvania, similar scenario. And Pat, from your perspective, maybe talk about Joe and Joanne Thompson. I think it speaks volumes for an American operator to continue to support the industry in Ontario and having a farm of the size and stature you do here. They obviously have a great deal of confidence in the Ontario program.
Absolutely. I know one of the questions I had for them when I went down to the Maryland farm for my job interview was their commitment to Ontario, worried about my own job security. And Joe said flat, and he gave me that, he's here and he's here to stay. They're going to support this industry and make sure that they do it, in Ontario as well as down in the U.S. And I take his word for what it is. He's here to stay, and he and Joanne are happy to have a farm up here. They love the program up here, and they're supporting it very heavily this year. We're breeding a lot of Ontario breds.
And yeah, when you've got Bettor's Delight and other exciting new stallion prospects, it is an exciting time, certainly for the Ontario program. And Anna, I know a new recruit into your operation that I'm excited about. We've talked about this before. I've always been a big fan of All Bets Off. Just a thought on how he's going to fit into the operation.
He's fitting in great. Bred more than 150 really nice mares last year. First crop of foals are, I have to say, outstanding. They have the same look as him. He certainly has stamped them. Great conformation, size, and a lot of them with his big white star. So far so good. We're well underway breeding more than 100 mares this season, and I think it's something really to look forward to. We'll have a bunch to sell ourselves for sure.
And he, of course, a son of the great Bettor's Delight himself. So looking forward to seeing that line continue here in Ontario. Bridget, I wanted to just switch gears here a little bit. I know something you wanted to talk about. And I think this really, caught a lot of people's attention recently when they read about Hanover Shoe Farm setting up a matching fund. It's to deal with the issue of integrity in the sport, and I guess sort of really stepping up to the plate in that regard. Can you tell us a bit about what that's all about?
Sure. Well, the details are still being ironed out, but we thought it was important to take the lead in funding a movement, so to speak, to help ensure integrity in the business. It came about, of course, from the indictments that happened in March. And reading perspective, reading the transcript, again, I say everyone involved is innocent until proven guilty. And I'm not here to talk them per se, but it just makes you realize some of the things that's going on in this business. And as a nursery, as a farm that takes such good care of these horses and loves them and kind of sets them free in the world, I was very dismayed to hear about some of the allegations. So our thought was to put up $250,000 in matching funds in the hopes of helping to ensure that people that are accused of cheating, that they are investigated properly and that it is turned over to the proper authorities so that, punishment and justice can be served. There's logistical things that have to be worked out. We need to put it in the hands of a third party that will be objective. But I think there really needs to be an investigative organization that can compile evidence can take it to the authorities and real justice can be doled out, not suspensions, not fines, but we really need to eliminate the cheaters and the bad people from this game because they are going to destroy it. I shouldn't say game, I should say business, but they're going to destroy it. So this is our way of eliminating them and protecting our horses, really. They should not, our equine athletes should not be subjected to some of the things that we read about in those indictments. And we take great pride in the care we take of our horses. We retire all of our brood mares. We take in horses that don't have homes. And to think that some of our horses are being treated like that was really the impetus of what started it. The response has been terrific. And I think once we get these details ironed out, exactly where the money is going to go to and who is going to administer the money, I think that we are going to well surpass the funds that we've pledged. Integrity is a real problem. And we felt like as a leading breeder, we should step to the forefront and kind of put our money where our mouth is and try to do something and encourage other people to do something. And it will be for the good of the industry for sure when the wrongdoers are eliminated.
Well, you answered my next question. I was going to ask how the response was, and it sounds like it has been well received at this point in time. And sounds like other organizations or other people may join and follow suit.
Yes, we've had a lot of positive responses. I've had people tell me they could raise the other 250,000 now as soon as we know the details of it. So like I said, we're working on that. It's people want to contribute, but they want to know exactly how the money will be used. So we're putting together a plan. Russell's working on a plan. And also, like I said, a third-party objective party to administer the funds so that the money is put to the best use, that it can be. So yes, it's been very well received and people are on board with it. And I think people understand that we need to step up and kind of save ourselves here. Like it's up to us to save ourselves. And integrity and public perception, it's a big problem. And it's not going to go away unless we make it go away. And there have been countless people that have left the business because they feel like they're not playing on a level playing field. And, for me, it was, the mistreatment of the horses that really got, when I read those indictments, that really, really got to me because I know Ann and Pat feel the same way. Like we take such good care of them, like every need they have, like they are treated like solid gold. And then just to read about some of the stuff that was done to them, it was heart-wrenching. And Russell and I talked about it and we thought this was the best way to go. And the investigative firms that specialize in this, the gathering of evidence, they could do things that racing commissions can't do. We feel that that's a really good way perhaps to use this money. They can gather the evidence, get the leads, get the tips, do the preliminary work and bring it to the people that can actually do something about it.
Well, we hope you'll keep us updated on more details on that, when you have them. Pat and Ann, I'll just give you both a chance to comment on that if you'd like. Pat, maybe start with you.
Yeah, like I say, kudos to Hanover for stepping up and this is very important to our industry. It can't just be pushed aside, and we do need to police ourselves better and get out there and stop these people from mistreating the animals. I mean, we raise these foals. We put every ounce of care we can. We try to make them as good as we possibly can, and we hand them off to somebody. And to hear about them being mistreated and not being cared for, it really is heartbreaking. It's it's tragic, and it's an awful perception for our business, because I know so many good trainers out there that care for those horses so well. They spend countless amounts of money and time to give those animals the best they possibly can, and to hear things like this, it's awful. And I'm just glad that Hanover is leading the way in doing something about this. So kudos to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Anne?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I had the same gut-wrenching feelings when I read some of the details, alleged details, I should say. And thank goodness that it is the greater minority of people who are doing that in our industry, and that most trainers are caring for their horses as we care for them. So I thank you for leading the way in how we can help to make a difference.
Well said. And on that note, we'll get set to wrap up tonight's show. And before we do that, let's have another look back at our poll question from earlier in the night. And again, we've got 3 of the experts in the breeding business in North America with us tonight. Wanted to know what you think is the most important trait in a yearling. Is it pedigree, conformation, athleticism, or other? Those were the 4 choices. And we're going to load the results here and have a look at those. Live television. Curtis McDonald, our ace producer, loading these results as we speak. And there they are, like magic. Conformation wins the day at 50%. Pedigree, obviously, a major consideration. Athleticism and other. I'm not sure what the other would be, but 4% of you said something other than those 3 are the most important consideration. We thank you for taking part in our poll question tonight. And let's recap those trivia questions as well. We had 3 of them that we ran during the show. The first one was surrounding Hanover Shoe Farms. Derives its name from the Hanover Shoe Company, which sold shoes across the U.S. in the early 1900s for $2.50 a pair. Was that true or false? The answer was actually true. I read it on Wikipedia, so it must be so. And our second question has to do with the great Cam Luck. He sired $31 million winners in the course of his career. We asked you to try and name his richest performer. The answer was the great mare Burning Point, a winner of $3.1 million in her career. And our final trivia question has to do with the top producing mare Classic Wish. She is the mother of Better's Delight. And we asked you to name her other 2 millionaire performers. They were the Triple Crown winner, no pun intended, and Roll with Joe, winner of $1.8 million in his career. So we thank you for playing along, and we will draw one winner at random following the show, and we will post that winner on our Facebook page. So to the 3 of you, a big thank you for joining us tonight. I know you're all tremendously busy, and to take an hour and a half of your time to join us is much appreciated. We want to wish you all the best with your new crop of yearlings this year, and stay safe.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Dr. J, Bridget Jablonski, Pat Woods, and Ann Strotman. Again, big thank you for joining us here tonight, guys. And don't forget, we will be back with another COSA Live Facebook show coming up in 3 days from now, this Sunday evening, and we hope you can join us again. And until then, make sure to stop by the Standardbred Canada website and submit your fantasy stable for 2020 in conjunction with COSA. It's a wonderful promotion this year, and you can do so by visiting the Standardbred Canada website, find out more information, and make sure to sign up for that. Again, we thank you for joining us tonight. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you back here on Sunday night.
COSA, the Central Ontario Standardbred Association, proudly serving Ontario horse people with integrity and accountability. Collaborative, supportive, helping to ensure a vibrant harness racing industry. Lifetime membership is free and there are many benefits. Become a new member today. COSA, representing the interests of horse people racing at Ontario racetracks. To find out more, visit cosaonline.com.